Chapter 23. William and Dr. Young ran through the cafeteria as the patients frantically yelled and scattered. Ruggs and Little Mike stood back to back looking out each window, saw William and ran to him with Ruggs saying,
William, what's going on?
Just follow us. They ran past room after room toward the exit. Little Mike stopped William, pointed, and then said,
William, what's that?
William looked out the window that was in his very own room and saw the Overcast hovering and staring straight at him. William discontinued the pause with, "Shit." The Overcast blasted through the glass and screamed toward William at high speed. William thought quickly, and time slowed again as he concentrated on every shard of glass that glistened in the air. William directed every shard he could as they bombarded the Overcast's eye socket and drilled through the backside of its skull, spraying blood everywhere. William caught everyone's attention with, "Come on, let's go! There's gonna be more, a lot more!" They ran up to the front desk where Nancy hid underneath, shaking. The storm let out a belch of thunder, followed by more of the downpour. This was a warm greeting to William. He always liked the rain. He loved it when it was cold. He now knew why. For John had told him why. Dr. Young shouted,
Nancy, get up.
Nancy stood, terrified. She began heading towards the glass and metal doors. Many of the Overcast blew through the ceiling in a single roar and quickly took Nancy away to her unpleasant doom. Dr. Young screamed in horror as he watched the receptionist that he had known for 6 years get lifted out and into the storm. William looked up at the hole that went straight through the first and second floors, out to what he blurred into focus as a gigantic swarm of Overcast flying beneath the rainstorm. William's vision became a little more normal instead of so black and white as they caught a small break. Then Ruggs and Little Mike averted their attention back to the entrance from a voice that came from within the restrooms ahead. It clumsily cursed out,
Fucking shit my fucking ass! What the fuck, Mikes?
Ruggs and Little Mike shouted in unison,
David!
William turned and saw David poking his head out the bathroom door. He called out, "David? What are you doing here? Get over here!" Dr. Young said,
He was coming back for his final checkout. Shit, I completely forgot.
William looked back as David said,
What the fuck, Mike? What did you do now? I leave for a little fucking bit and you fuck everyone's ass?
William smiled and then said again, "Come on, let's go!" David replied with his head still poking out from the bathroom door.
In case you haven't noticed, Mike,
David said, as he pointed at them from the other side of the door.
you're the ones who are on the wrong flippin' side.
Just as he finished, Overcast burst through the front door in droves. William witnessed as they went straight at David. David looked back and said,
Oh shit, my ass!
He quickly shut the door and leaned on it as the Overcast scratched at it ravenously, trying to get in. Their demented metal teeth bit at the door, contorting and tweaking the metal cage that separated them from their feeding ground. Overcast arms tore their own dead blue flesh off as they reached through the broken up metal cage. William ripped Dr. Young's keycard from his neck and keyed through, knowing that he couldn't get through the wall with his mind.
Dr. Young.
Just as John had told him, he can't lift or move more than his own weight. Luckily to William, though, the Overcast were light, but this also made them agile. Nonetheless, the Overcast were easy to move. William opened the glass door with his mind as he bolted at the group of Overcast. He barrel rolled as he lifted his body in the air and into the group. Overcast randomly flew everywhere as William blew through the door and grabbed David. "Go with Doc, Ruggs, and Mike."
Alright, Mike. I'm coming over there,
David ran toward them, quickly got through the door and stood behind the cage as they watched William begin fighting the Overcast. William stood in front of the group of Overcast and flung one into the wall with the slightest of ease to his mind. The other Overcast saw this and stayed their distance. It seemed as if, for the first time, they showed fear. The pause was only brief, followed by the Overcast squawking and heading towards William. He ran as fast as he could as Dr. Young hurried and fumbled to open the door and let William in. William dove through the door and spun around, shutting it with his force and keeping the Overcast out for a temporary moment, blowing them all back at once. The Overcast all flew simultaneously at the wall and joined their companion. This only brought more. A few in the midst of the swarm looked directly at William as he used his powerful gift. He scurried through the door just as 12 more Overcast came through and bolted right into the gate.
Those doors are pretty strong. It should be enough to hold them back,
Dr. Young proclaimed. An Overcast clawed at the metal gate and chewed on it. Its grinding teeth bent and warped the gate again until it shoved an arm through, ripping its own flesh from itself once more. William snapped them all out of it. They followed him as he ran back the other way, past the guards and board members. The group of men just watched William and his followers run past and wondered what was going on. Then they heard the awful screech. The Overcast swarmed around the men that were standing and left nothing but slashed and beaten red bodies on the floor. William looked back and saw the men all lying down, dead. Horror filled his mind when he saw this, as he figured he could have saved them. William just turned back around and continued towards survival. They kept running until they got to the cafeteria. They all shut the double doors and leaned against them while William considered grabbing a chair with his mind. He then remembered not to, for if he did, he would have to deal with much more of the Overcast. The people in the cafeteria all jumped in frightfulness as the group of Overcast slammed into the door. William rushed over to one of the metal chairs, grabbed it, and ran back to the door. He then stuffed the legs of the chair into the door handles and urged the men to keep running, along with all of the other patients in the room. William shouted, "Go! Everyone, go! They're gonna get through soon!" Patients and staff screamed in horror as they saw what was behind the door through the small slotted windows. They all rushed to the opposite side. William turned and asked Dr. Young, "Is there another way out?" Dr. Young nodded and replied, yelling over all the screeching and thunderous storm.
Yes, we have to...
Dr. Young started to point when the enormous Overcast cluster outside had knocked an entire building over. The crashing was the loudest thing that William had ever heard. The building toppled right into the back half of the institution. Concrete from one building united with another's as the Titans gave into each other and began to crash and rumble. A gas line ignited from the other building that had fallen, followed by a loud whistling sound as swirling objects jetted away from the enormous explosion. Dust and debris flew everywhere as the surrounding audience stood quiet from the catastrophic event. Distant thunder commenced as more buildings throughout the city went down in the raging storm of Overcast. William's hearing began to ring from the unbearable thrashing sounds, and then quickly came back to focus.
What the fucking shit?
David yelled out, never faltering his personality during the devastation. William saw that the courtyard was no longer a complete circle. Instead, it now led to freedom. The giant oak tree stood firm in the midst of all the mayhem. William smirked at the irony. He then heard loud gunshots coming from everywhere. military had made its way into every major city in the world, since that was where the Overcast had seemed to be swarming. Overcast fell from all over the sky as missiles and bullets riddled the swarming heap. William saw that the Overcast was now distracted and led the men through the rubble with the rest of the lucky patients who happened to be in the cafeteria. Dr. Young helped patients up a pile of rubble and through to the outside. The group ran to the park across the street. William watched the devastation around him and couldn't help but feel that this was his fault. He then noticed that the military had already set up a place to fight, where citizens gathered as more and more Overcast came to aid the swarm. Turrets and soldiers were lined up in their strategic places, eating away with bullets at the constant growing swarm. William and the group ran over to the protected area where the military was setting up tents to get out of the rain. The firefights went on and on all down the streets as newly set up stations stood their ground and fought the Overcast. A tank, about 40 yards away from William, spun its top around searching for a target. A gas truck drove by and was obliterated from friendly crossfire. The tank went up in flames with black bellowing smoke. Soldiers that were on fire desperately tried to exit their vehicle before being quickly consumed by Overcast. William thought about his family and was almost glad they were not here for this. He wanted to just lift off and fly so bad, but knew that it would compromise those that were safe. Suddenly, an Overcast bolted down at William. He was ready though, for his eye glowed bright blue as the pain hit him before the attack. William dodged the Overcast as it was soon downed by a nearby soldier. Dr. Young witnessed William's eye attract attention from the Overcast. He then looked around for certain people in the crowd who might be wearing sunglasses. Instead, he saw a pair among many other objects that had been dropped on the floor due to the lack of care according to the situation at hand. The doc ran and scooped them up and brought them to William. He held them out.
Put these on, William. I think they sense the light from that damn eye of yours.
William considered the logic. Maybe it was silly. It actually made perfect sense. He thanked Dr. Young while taking the sleek black sunglasses and placed them over his eyes. This did cover the glow quite well. William didn't really believe that it helped, but he looked up to Dr. Young. He figured that he'd keep them always, so that he'd remember him. William turned to David and said, "Hey, good seeing you again." David laughed and said,
You fucking shit-ass.
David continued.
Listen, William, I never got to thank you.
William stopped him and said, "Trust me, buddy. You helped yourself on that," David said in sudden realization.
Shit, Mike, my fucking kid. He's in California, Mike. We gotta get him.
David turned, frantically looking around, saw a soldier and headed towards him, shouting,
Hey you! Fucking Mike head!
The soldier turned and said, "Just stay back, sir," David said back.
Give me a gun.
The soldier replied, confused in the midst of the mayhem. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't." William could tell the man wanted to. After all, what would it hurt? Everyone was outnumbered, everywhere. Every bad thought and fear had just broken into reality. It broke into our lives with a body that man himself had given it in the beginning of thought. The first fear that man had created. David then ran past the soldier and snagged one of the many fully automatic rifles. The soldier yelled out, "Hey, stop!" and began to run after him. William couldn't believe what David just did, but it made him think. He saw a jet black street bike that was laid down on the road not 20 yards away. William thought as David zigzagged and rolled around on the grass with the soldier. William turned as he decided,
Doc!
Dr. Young turned as William finished.
You take care of those two for me, all right?
William pointed at Ruggs and Little Mike as they looked back at him with sorrow. Little Mike said,
But, William, why are you...
William said,
Ruggs, Mike. Don't change, huh? Okay? We'll meet again. I promise.
William shook Dr. Young's hand and said,
Thanks for everything, Doc.
Dr. Young said back,
Thank you, William. Now go get your family, David. I can handle it from here. I'll take care of these guys. Oh, and find John, William. He has answers.
William was surprised that Doc knew what he was planning. He nodded, and then ran up and kicked the soldier off of David while grabbing the gun. David stood, and William threw the gun to him, saying,
You shoot, I'll drive.
David laughed and yelled,
Ha! Woohoo! Now we're in for some real shit.
William ran to the black street bike and lifted it up. He pressed the electric start button, praying that it would turn over. The machine quickly fired up and howled with power. David ran and hopped on quickly. It took a second, but William remembered riding dirt bikes with his dad when he was little. He tested the clutch with his left hand while in first gear. He then pulled up the throttle and revved the high RPM engine. William then checked the foot brake on his right. Once he readied himself, he assessed the situation around him and took a deep breath. He stomped again to make sure the gear was in first, pulled the throttle, lifted the clutch, and let it rip. The bike took off, fast. William headed down the battle-mottled street and noticed debris in the way. He figured since they had good transportation that he could lift the things blocking the way with his mind, while David could shoot the following overcast. So William did exactly that. As they approached rubble, William concentrated and felt the buzzing in his brain come back. He started to like the buzzing. It helped him concentrate. William tossed rubble left and right like a plow as him and David raced through the city streets, swerving from the things that were too heavy for William to move. Some overcast quickly caught William's power and zipped straight at them. He could feel them grow near as his eye lit up and shouted back to David,
Shoot them, David! Shoot! Behind us!
David nodded and put the arm that had the gun in it out. But the trigger wouldn't budge. William knew what David wouldn't and yelled back,
The safety, damn it! It's right above the trigger! Push the small button in towards you!
David replied with a
Fuck off!
then switched the safety off. Bullets left the chamber from the fully automatic weapon quickly as David began to empty his gun at the overcast. One dropped, then two, then five. The more David was frightened, the better his aim got. They worked their way out to the edge of the city's buildings. Within the last 200 yards, William had a feeling. He looked up and noticed a huge section of one skyscraper falling right down onto them. Time slowed again as William cranked the throttle all the way back. David screamed. They reached nearly 190 as the chunk of hulking concrete slammed down. They slipped just past it, barely enough to escape the giant plumes of debris. Their surroundings became more calm as they merged onto a wrecked and surprisingly clear freeway. David's head began to buzz, along with a small pain in his eye. He too started to understand.